Mike Vrabel, Todd Monken, Mike McCarthy, Aaron Glenn, Brian Flores, Vance Joseph, Thomas Brown, Arthur Smith, Drew Petzing, Anthony Weaver, Mike Kafka, David Shaw. We're talking about them all. And don't forget, Ben Johnson. Let's go. Welcome back to CHGO Bears After Dark, presented by our guys over at ComEd. ComEd always helping us keep the lights on here on CHGO Bears After Dark. We appreciate their support all season long as we finally reached the offseason here on CHGO Bears After Dark. Welcome back. I am your host, Greg Braggs Jr. Alongside me, as always, is Corey Wootton. Adam Rank will be joining us in just a little bit. But we're bringing back a friend of the program, of course, Windy City Gridiron's finest. That would be one Taylor Dahl. And for those of you that aren't familiar with Taylor Dahl's work, as far as not just what she does with Windy City Gridiron, because she also does a lot of fine work down in Jacksonville. And we've been talking to her a lot here over the last week, trying to get as much dirt and information as we possibly can, Corey, because everybody wants to talk about the battle of Ben Johnson. Who will win, Jacksonville or Chicago? So welcome back to the program. As always, Taylor, appreciate you coming on. I had to,
the parallels between Jacksonville and Chicago have been too close the last 10 years. So I feel like every time something happens in Jacksonville, it ends up happening in Chicago and vice versa. And then now this whole last few weeks has been my sides of Twitter, Bears and Jags fighting over who gets Ben Johnson and who gets whatever offensive linemen are coming out of the draft this year too.
Yeah, well, and the big thing too of the news this morning, because I think there was the impression that Jacksonville was going to wipe the slate clean, fire the head coach, fire the general manager to make way, or at least have the best sales pitch to Ben Johnson that, hey, you can bring in the GM of your choice, have that organizational alignment. And then we all wake up to the news that it sounds like Trent Baalke is going to stay in Jacksonville. So from your standpoint, with what you're hearing and who you talk to, how much of that was a surprise, and how much do you think that will affect this competition for the darling head coach of this coaching search in Ben Johnson?
Yeah, I mean, we were all shocked to the point we had like graphics ready to go this morning thinking everybody was going to be gone. And it was, we were waiting. We thought around like 9:30, that was the word that was coming out. Around 9:30, we're going to find out. Shad wasn't here, so he was going to kind of call it in. They were going to do this over kind of the internet call, but right after he announced everything. And then when you get the official statement from him and he says, I'm going to move on and go through this head coaching search with Trent Baalke, everybody was in shock, honestly. And I've talked to you guys several times the last few weeks where I've heard a lot of people in Detroit who are close with Ben Johnson in that situation say that he does not want to work with Trent Baalke. And it's been a thing. And he's not the only one. There's several of the top coaching candidates who have been pretty vocal about they don't want to work with him. And it's been an issue, honestly, for a while. You go back to when they hired Urban Meyer that few years ago. They interviewed two people in that coaching search, and Urban Meyer ended up being the one they hired. That obviously turned into a disaster. But part of that, I think, was it's hard to get people to want to come in here and work under Trent Baalke. And so I do think it's going to affect things. And now whether Shad Khan talked to media today, and he was very vocal about a lot of things of why He kind of thought it was the coaching of why the season went the way they did. They obviously end with 4 wins, and that was not expected whatsoever. They thought this was going to be a team that could compete in the AFC South and win 9-10 games, and they weren't close to it. And so he was vocal today that he believed it was the coaching staff. He thinks that they do have the roster that can compete. But he doesn't think that they were able to execute it because of some of the coaching decisions, and obviously why Doug Peterson was fired. But he did say, somebody asked him if, let's say, they didn't say Ben Johnson, but they said if a coach comes in and says that they don't want to work with Trent Baalke, would he reevaluate his decision? And he did say in the presser today that he would. He said he would have a conversation with that coach and see what their approach would want to be, what their reasonings for not wanting to work with Trent Baalke, and maybe he would reevaluate it then. That is so, and there's no way that you're going to tell me in 1 month after you spend 3 weeks interviewing all of these coaches that then you'll say, never mind Trent Baalke. Now you have to go on this GM search. And then now you hired a coach who isn't a GM who's not going to have say in the coach that you hired. It's just messy and backwards. And so it was a really weird presser. Honestly, guys, I think fans felt even worse after it, which is not what you want to get when your owner is talking to the fan base.
So, Taylor, who are your 3 favorites when it comes down to head coaches for the Jacksonville Jaguars? I know you got some pinned out. Who are your top 3?
So my 3 are the same for both, honestly, the Bears and the Jags. Obviously, Ben Johnson's number 1. I think that's the obvious for most people. But to me, it's Liam Cohen and Todd Monken. So I was excited to see the Todd Monken news. I like him a lot. Joe Brady is towards the top of mine, too. But even going back to 2 months ago when we started talking about coaching decisions, I just think it's important for both players and Trevor Lawrence and Caleb Williams to have offensive-minded coaches. And I know a lot of people are saying they, you can do without. Look at the Lions and Dan Campbell, but then you also have to make sure you're hitting on that offensive coordinator. And the thing that worries me the most if you bring a defensive guy in is then let's say the offensive coordinator, whoever you hire, is good. And 3 years now, you're going to be looking for another offensive coordinator because that guy's probably going to go get a head coaching job. And then you're talking about both Caleb and Trevor having multiple offensive coordinators in their first 2 years for Caleb and 5 years for Trevor Lawrence. And then if they suck, then you're having to fire them and find another guy to call plays and do this all over again. So I feel like getting that offensive minded coach for both Trevor and Caleb's important because you obviously want to develop these guys. And we've seen Trevor kind of backtrack. He's regressed a little bit the last year, and after starting 8-3 last year, they've gone 5-18 since that. And you've seen a lot of Trevor injuries, but you've also seen a lot of strengths that Trevor had in 2022 just kind of start to disappear. And you don't want to continue that trend.
And then what are your thoughts real quick? Both of you guys chime in on this. Bobby Slowick, he's a guy from Houston that's a Shanahan disciple. Obviously, I feel like he's got the short end of the stick. He's had multiple injuries with wide receivers this year. It's been a tough year for them. Seems like they're going to make a playoff push. But what are your guys' thoughts about him?
Yeah, Slowick is someone we talked a lot about here, obviously being in the division with the Houston Texans. And so preseason, we talked about him a ton. Like he was probably one of the higher ones on the rankings of if Doug goes this year, is he somebody that you want to take a look at? And preseason, it was a hard yes. It's kind of started to fizzle out a little bit. I think some of that because of what we saw with CJ Stroud this year. And there was a lot of regression there, it feels like. But I do think there are circumstances. I mean, you look at the offensive line, if anybody knows about struggles on offensive line at Chicago and Jacksonville. So You look at how much he's had to deal with behind that line this year, one who last year was super beat up and actually ended up playing better than a healthy offensive line this year. And then, yeah, to your point, you lose Nico Collins for games. Tank Dell, obviously, that injury was brutal too. They weren't really able to ever consistently run the ball. We know also how that affects things when you're trying to get these younger quarterbacks going. So I'm not totally throwing him out the door, but I do think a lot of people have kind of like tamed their expectations on Slowick just because of CJ Stroud alone.
Taylor Dahl from Windy City Gridiron on the Bears side of things, but also with 1010 XL, the flagship home of the Jacksonville Jaguars, joining us here on CHGO Bears After Dark, trying to give us the best insights here on what we can expect from this Ben Johnson derby that's going to get underway this week. I mean, the Detroit Lions win last night on primetime. They dominate the Minnesota Vikings, and now that means they get a bye week, and that opens the door to remote interviews. You can't interview anyone in person until I believe January 20th, but these teams can start requesting interviews to talk to some of these coaches that are in the playoffs right now for remote interviews. And so through reports, it sounds like the Bears have requested an interview with both the offensive and defensive coordinators of the Detroit Lions, with Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn. Have you gotten any confirmation that the Jacksonville Jaguars have even requested an interview with Ben Johnson?
So what I've heard so far, they haven't started their request at all. From that tonight, they said, okay, expect things probably later tonight to start coming out, that they're going to reach out to some certain people. I know the three names, it was obviously Ben Johnson's the number one on the list, but they did say him, Liam Cohen, and then there was one more on the list that I read that they for sure wanted to talk to, and that was going to be their first names released. So I haven't
maybe Anthony Weaver.
That's what I was thinking. I think it was Weaver. And so I think that that's news we'll probably hear really soon. Obviously, with everything that kind of went on today, it slowed things down a little bit, just because I do think him having to talk, him and Trent Baalke talking to the media today, trying to calm people as much as possible, even though it did the opposite. I do think that kind of slowed things down a little bit, because they did want to kind of see the reaction of a lot of things. And one of the things that also stood out to me in the press conference that was interesting is they asked him who in the building, Shad Khan, who he listens to, like who's the guy that he'll listen to for different advice when it comes to coaching decisions, when it comes to who he's gonna draft and whatever. And Shad Khan is not a football guy. He's not one of the guys that is very in depth and in the know of the football side of things. He's obviously has a lot of money and has put a lot of money into this team, but when it comes to him actually the football side of stuff, it's just not there. So everyone was curious of who he's been talking to outside of Trent Baalke. And he said Ethan Waugh, who's the assistant general manager, who is Trent Baalke's like right-hand man, best friend. So everybody was like, well, of course, this all makes sense now, because you have this owner who's listening to a general manager and his best friend. So why would he try and go and find another general manager? And so I do, Greg, when you were talking earlier about how much I think it'll affect some of these people that they get to interview, I think people will still come talk to him, because Shad does have money and he'll pay somebody. So money talks. And that's
my wife and I were talking about this morning, and we were all in London, right? So we're doing this river cruise with all our fans that came across the pond, and there's Shad Khan's freaking yacht. It's unbelievable. It's like as big as a city, and there's like 50 people working on it at any given time. And we're like, well, Shad Khan can offer a yacht, and the McCaskies can offer you a voucher to Dunkin' Donuts. Like it's just two totally different worlds, honestly.
Yeah. And that's what I think the selling point here will be. I think it will have that conversation and be like, well, I'll pay you money. There's always the state income tax. You're not going to have the taxes down here that you have other places. Oh, it's bright, sunny Florida. There's things that you can sell here. But I also think that the Trent Baalke aspect is going to kind of stray people away a little bit, because it's not just these few coaches. We hear it all the time. Like they use the word snake when they're talking about Trent Baalke. When you talk to people around the league, they use the word snake. Wow. And there's a reason that in former stops, it's ended terribly when he's left. And so a lot of people don't trust him around the league, and they don't think he's technically doing what's best for the team. They think he's a little selfish in a lot of aspects. And we've seen that a lot in Jacksonville. And 3 years ago, almost to the day 3 years ago, fans were showing up to the game dressed as clowns to mock Shad Khan for not firing Trent Baalke. And then now we're here in the same exact position 3 years later.
So Taylor, if money is equal, for the Bears or Jaguars situation, head coach, what do you think they'd more like to work with? You think they'd more like to work with a guy like Caleb Williams or Trevor Lawrence? What do you think is more attractive, given the personnel offensively, the weapons, etc.?
Yeah, so I've gone back and forth on this a lot, because I feel like I could defend each side. I think that obviously Trevor, now you kind of know who Trevor is. Now we're still waiting to see how high that ceiling actually is, but you do know his strengths. You know his weaknesses. You know he's one of those guys that's going to push the ball down the field. Brian Thomas Jr. had a phenomenal season, so already you're talking about you get to come in and work with Brian Thomas Jr. and Trevor Lawrence. So I do think there's a lot of appeal to the way Trevor plays. But I do think there is something to be said about having Caleb Williams at the beginning of everything and being able to make him the quarterback that you want to make him. And we've had so many conversations about Caleb and what he's good at and what he's bad at. And some of that is, the playing and structure. We talk about that. We've seen him start to perfect those intermediate midfield passes. And that's something that a lot of people said he wasn't going to be able to do. So I do think Ben Johnson has to be looking at that and being like, I have this guy that I can make kind of my quarterback and build everything off of this, while in Jacksonville, it is what Trevor is Trevor is. And it's kind of what you are going to get out of him. And like I said, I think some people still think you can pull more out of him. There's still, the ceiling hasn't been reached yet. But I do think that, do you want somebody who comes in? The AFC South is way worse than the NFC North. How competitive do you want the division to be? But then at the same time, too, the AFC as a whole, you have to go through Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow and all of these other quarterbacks if you want to win outside the division. So I do think there's wins on each side. But when it comes to quarterback, I think there's arguments to be made that he could like either guy for different things. Some people do say that Trevor Lawrence's style matches maybe what Ben Johnson likes to do a little bit more. But I think we've seen Caleb do a little bit of everything. So if you have a coach that can pull that and coach that into him, I do think Caleb could succeed under Ben Johnson very, very easily.
With all the money in mind with what Shad Khan can bring to the table and trying to figure out what Ben Johnson's price tag is, have you gotten any kind of inclination or idea of where you think that number will be? And then just being on the Bears side of things, do you think the Bears can come anywhere close to that number?
And I don't know. I haven't heard any number whatsoever, but I pretty much have heard it's a blank check here. Like Shad Khan's going to say, you let me know what you think you're worth, and he'll pay it. Like we've seen Shad Khan pay way overpay players. We've seen him pay coaches that shouldn't have been coached. We've seen him, honestly, with the Urban Meyer year when it wasn't working, him just kind of cut ties and be like, oh, well, I kind of wasted money, but I have more to spend, so it's okay, move on from it. And it is like, that is one of the biggest benefits about Jacksonville, is you have an owner who can spend and will spend and isn't afraid to kind of throw the bag at people when he feels like it's worth it. Now, it's in his press conference today too, he did also mention that he said that the team this year was very predictable. And so they asked what he wants what he's looking for out of the next head coach. And he said, somebody unpredictable. And so I'm not quite sure what we've all been trying to like diagnose that statement. Like, what do you mean? Like you're going off the off the beaten path a little bit, and you don't want Ben Johnson, you want somebody else? Or are you saying you just want Ben Johnson because he is unpredictable in his play calling? So we've been trying to figure that out. But Shad Khan, I honestly think he's going to say, here, you let me know what you want and I'll pay it to you.
Wow. It seems like the Yankees, the way he runs things. Like, you pretty much get whatever
Yankees
you
and
want.
Dodgers, they're just like, go for it, whatever you want.
Well, and with coaches, you can pay as much as you want. There's a salary cap obviously for players, but with coaches, blank check, as you said. So it'll be interesting. Okay, well, there's going to be a lot of interesting things, and I think it'll be interesting to see how long Ben Johnson, remains the offensive coordinator for the Lions. If they go all the way to the Super Bowl, this could honestly take some time, and we probably will be talking to you down the road. But in the event that this decision comes faster than that, you're early. We're not gonna write it with marker. But if you had to write it down in pencil right now, who are you picking? The Bears or the Jags to win the Ben Johnson Derby?
Yeah, at this point, I'm going Bears just because because of what happened today. And I think that I've just talked to so many people, and now we've talked to people, and I kind of shared some stuff that there was Mangler, who used to play for the Bears and the Jags, Greg Huntington, was very vocal on air about some stuff about Ben Johnson, said that the Jacksonville is his number one wanted place. We've talked to a lot of people since Detroit. Since then, they did say that's true, but they did say the Bears were a close second. And from what he's seen this year of Caleb, he really, really likes Caleb Williams. So we've talked to a lot of people about that. But we have full on many people talking about, we had Jeremy Fowler on today, said the same thing. He does not like Trent Baalke. So I feel like unless Shad Khan really does backtrack and takes everything back and lets him have kind of like this full range of everything, I think he is going to lean towards Chicago. And I think you're also in a division where you're familiar and you've already played these teams. Like, how to beat the Minnesota Vikings and the Green Bay Packers. Why wouldn't you want to continue to do it?
Well, you've got Greg Huntington and we've got the Sears Tower, right? So you can tell all your Jacksonville friends, we see your Greg Huntington and we raise you a Sears Tower burner account, and that trumps all bets when it comes to predictions and sources. So Taylor, we're gonna cut you loose. Appreciate you coming on. Adam Rank will be joining us here in just a few moments, but if there's anything you want to let our viewers know about where they can find you and some of the work you're doing, especially obviously with some of the Chicago Bears stuff, why don't you let them know?
Yeah, so you'll find me on Twitter at Taydol1010XL. It is a good split because I do cover the Bears and the Jags, so this is probably the perfect time if you want to follow me because you're getting both sides of everything. This is my busy season. For me, once the offseason hits, I do a ton of draft podcasts, a ton of free agency podcasts, all of that stuff. So that will probably be about a month, and the Windy City Gridiron channel will be going crazy with all of that if you want to see potential free agents and start getting some of these draft picks that I actually feel like we need this year. So
well, you do an absolutely fantastic job, and we appreciate your efforts here on CHGO Bears After Dark, hosting a post-game show here. The last time they won before yesterday, all the way back in our jolly old London days. So we appreciate your contributions to CHGO Bears, and we look forward to talking to you here down the road, and hopefully your prediction of Ben Johnson to the Bears comes true.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Taylor.
Hi, Corey.
That's right. That's Taylor Dahl from Windy City Gridiron and 1010 XL down in Jacksonville, the flagship home of the Jacksonville Jaguars. So certainly somebody that you're going to want to be talking to right now. We're going to be talking to Adam Rank here in just a couple moments. But first, want to give a shout out to our guys over at Circa Sports. Whether it's pro or college, the app to bet pro football is Circa Sports Illinois. Circa Sports, it's sports betting the way it should be. Circa Sports Illinois has high betting limits, low holds, and exceptional customer service. Bet on all your favorite teams in every game this season. Spreads, props, futures are in-game. Circa Sports has it. Fund and bet like a pro from anywhere, anytime in Illinois. Download your new bookie today at circasports.com. Must be 21 or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Also want to give a shout out to our guys over at Game Time. They help get me and Cody Delmendo from CHGO Cubs into the Winter Classic at Wrigley Field. So, Corey, we saw football at Wrigley Field a month and a half ago or so with Northwestern and Ohio State. And now we see some hockey at Wrigley. And you can continue to get all those sweet events and tickets to those kind of events with Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets to find the best value. The Game Time app is so customer friendly, guys. I have done I bought AC/DC tickets for this upcoming spring, and what's cool about it is when you go into it, kind of gives you an aerial view of the seat map and all these different locations within the stadium that show you the hottest deal, the best deal, the super deals, the cheapest ticket, and it just kind of really itemizes it out for what kind of ticket you're looking for, and it's very user friendly. When you go on and click on the seat you want, it's got a panoramic view once you click on it to get the exact vantage point that you're going to get from inside the stadium. They also have great coverage. Their Game Time ticket for coverage is guaranteed to be delivered on time, and your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry, and also lowest price guaranteed. Or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CHGO for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use the redeem code CHGO for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. What time is it?
Game who?
Whoa, what's up?
Adam Rank time. That's
wow.
Right.
Travis
there
Matthews.
He is.
You come from the golf course or what?
Yeah, listen, it's the fantasy football season is over. So now this is what I do is I go out there and I hit balls. I'm not going to go out there and play yet until I make sure my putting's dialed in. But yeah, it's now golf season has officially started out here.
Well, I mean, you say fantasy football season is over. So how many leagues were you in and how many did you win, Mr. Fantasy Guru?
17 leagues and I won 3. I won all 3 of my championships. So I was perfect on Championship Sunday.
Oh, 3 for 3. Like Jordan.
And they were all, it was a combined 3 points or less total for all 3. They're all fractional wins. Each and every one of them. I was sweating out 3 of them.
Yeah. Well, hey, I named it to start the show. We talked with Taylor Dow a lot about Ben Johnson, and the Jags have not announced one request for an interview. Meanwhile, the Chicago Bears have gone on a bevy of interview requests. We are up to 13 right now from the likes of Ben Johnson, Mike Vrabel, and all the way to Mike McCarthy, Brian Flores, and then names I don't know if anybody was anticipating today, like Mike Kafka and David Shaw and Drew Petzing from Arizona. I mean, it's all over the map. Vance Joseph, so for you, Adam, now that the season is over and we can talk about the glory of beating Green Bay as well, but obviously all the talk today is about where this head coaching search is going to go. So where is your headspace at right now as you're hearing all these rumors flying in?
This is kind of like the first time your aunt got Facebook and she's now friending everybody that she's ever known in her life. Like, oh my God, yeah, I went to grade school with Dolores. Got to hit her up and all this stuff. And that's exactly what they're doing. They're like, hey, who's coached in the NFL? Okay, yeah, you're going to get an interview here. I guess this is part of the problem with technology is that you can sit here and just be like, yeah, because I'm assuming a lot of these are going to be Zoom interviews. That type of thing, getting to know you a little bit. And then it's really going to be a couple of weeks before we really get down to serious business of who is going to be the next coach of the Chicago Bears. It also leads me to believe that it's going to take some time for this to be done. There's not going to be a quick resolution. And part of the reason is going to be because of Ben Johnson. And sitting here listening to your conversation with Taylor Dahl about the Jags and a lot of what is said about the Jags is great. I love the Khan family. I love AEW. They have more money than you can imagine. Like they own a Premier League team. They pretty much own the city of Jacksonville. But you know what? They also own Trent Baalke, which is like how you are going to literally fumble this bag. You're going to lose out possibly on Trent Baalke, or excuse me, you're going to lose out on possibly Ben Johnson because you don't want to fire Trent Baalke. I would have fired him today, along with Doug Peterson. I've been like, the door is yours. I don't know what it is. I don't know what the redeeming quality is with Trent Baalke in the fact, like, let's say that Ben Johnson didn't sign with Jacksonville, even if you did fire Trent Baalke. That's okay. You'll find another GM somewhere. I wouldn't even take the risk unless they want to make a big show of it and make Ben Johnson say the words, fire Trent Baalke and I'll come, and them doing it. Be like, okay, he's fired. Like, done. Okay, now you have to sign. I don't know if that's the ruse that they're trying to go through.
Yeah, that's the most surprising part to me is like you've heard through multiple head coaching candidates that they don't want to work with him, and then all of a sudden, right, you have a optimal spot where people want to be there, but that's kind of it's very surprising from that standpoint. I mean, maybe Khan is thinking, I got so much money that I could pay whatever at that point, and they can use that as a negotiating tactic that maybe they have more say written in their contract, something along those lines. But it kind of baffles me from that standpoint.
When you see the pyro budget for AEW, you realize how much money they truly have.
Oh, yeah. My dad's a big AEW fan, so I know.
Well, and so Shad Khan's son obviously runs AEW.
Yeah.
And he was in our studios like 2 weeks ago.
Wait, what?
Yes. Yeah.
Tony Khan was in your studios.
Tony Khan.
Why was I not a part of this?
They had an AEW event in Chicago, so he was doing the media rounds. And one day he's walking in with, some of our other CHGO sports guys. They have a wrestling show that they're trying to launch, the CHGO Wrestling podcast that they do periodically, and they'll do some live streams during some of the bigger events. And all of a sudden this guy's walking through with like this nice suit, and we're like live on the air. We're like, who's this guy? And then it was
who's this guy?
I didn't know. We didn't know. We're like, and they're like,
he's still an NFL owner.
Yeah, they're like, that's Tony Khan. We're like, oh yeah, we saw your your yacht while we were in London. It's pretty wild. We're like, hey, hey, don't be shy about sponsoring the program there, Mr. Khan.
Yeah, no doubt about it. But yeah, so Jacksonville does have a lot of great things going for it. And I was just on the air with Rogers Sportsnet. People are like, what's the most coveted job? And I go, I really think it comes down to your quarterback evaluation at this point. Like who do you want to go with? Who do you think has the most upside? I personally think it's Caleb, but you know what? I could be, somebody might feel different. And I think that Ben Johnson got an opportunity to see what Caleb is all about. And I know you kind of mentioned it before when you were talking about beating the Packers. And this is one of the points I made. And this will be on my show because I just recorded my podcast for tomorrow because I'm running behind. I had a tournament this weekend. By the way, if I can do one thing real quick. So I put this team together about a month ago. Mm-hmm. This is a third place medal. But I put a team together about 4 weeks ago. And we were beating all these club teams over the weekend. But in any event, so my things behind. But I was going to say about one of the takeaways from yesterday, if you don't mind me just diving into this real quick, because I think this is an important point. As much as yesterday was about a redemption for Cairo Santos, I think it was a redemption for Caleb Williams, who did not get the benefit of his comeback against the Commanders, the Packers, the Vikings, and the Lions. He didn't get to enjoy any of that because the team let him down. And you could reason that maybe they wouldn't have beat the Vikings, perhaps they wouldn't have beat the Lions. That's fair. The first two should have been his. And the rookie of the year conversation would have been a lot different. A lot of things would have been a lot different. So that to me yesterday was so important for Caleb. Also, he's never lost at Lambeau Field. Never lost a game at Lambeau Field. He has more wins in 2025 at Lambeau Field than Jordan Love. That will not change until at least September. Mm-hmm. And so when you're looking at this job right now, I think that's really important because now when you're trying to understand like where is my quarterback evaluation? I think that Caleb now, as dumb as it sounds, it looks different because he did win that game in week 18 to be like, okay, yeah, fine. And then you're like, oh yeah, he should have won 4 other ones, maybe even 5 had, the team not failed around him. So I think that's good. I think that's good for us. And I think that Ben Johnson notices that too. And as Taylor was saying, like he knows how to beat the Vikings and how to beat the Packers. Right. I think he would find a way to beat the Lions as well.
Right. Yeah. Well, and Corey, your guy, Justin Fields, and T3P's guy, T3P. Hey, speak of the devil, T3P just showed up in the chat. Your guy, T3P's guy, Justin, 0-6 versus Green Bay, and Caleb Williams should be 2-0 and undefeated in Lambeau. So,
I'm listen.
Don't get all defensive with me. Justin was your guy.
What have I said?
Herb 2, T3P 2. So now you gonna wear it. We got our guy. He beat Green Bay. Your guy couldn't beat Green Bay.
You not listen to both games. You not listen to my evaluation on him. I said I'm happy with Caleb. Listen, I think when you look at his year, I think he had a pretty poor year in terms of everything looking at it. But there's a lot of positives to take from it. And I look at how he protected the football. Only 6 interceptions, right? 20 touchdowns, didn't woo or wow you. But at times you were like, man, some of these throws he made, the precision, the accuracy, he needs coaching. That's why when it comes to the head coach, they're like, we need this defensive guy. We need this deep. You need the offensive mastermind. That's what this league is becoming. I want a guy like Andy Reid that's consistent every year. He's going to get the best out of you. Look what he did for Alex Smith. Oh, he's a game manager. He comes from 49ers. He's one of the top quarterbacks in the league. Right. Then with Patrick Mahomes, he gets to learn under Alex Smith for a year. Thrust in there 50 touchdowns. I want a coach like that that's going to put his quarterback in a position to succeed and coach him up, right? Some of these bad habits that Caleb has, let's write him of some of those. Let's improve on it, right? Getting the ball out, right? The rhythm and timing throws. So that's why I want a guy like Ben Johnson. Obviously, it's critical who he hires if the Bears do get him as a defensive coordinator. Some of these position coaches. Is he going to have a consultant that's working with him, right? A former head coach, maybe to talk him through some of those game time decisions. Yep. That's what I'm hoping that they do with somebody that doesn't have that coaching experience. But I think they need their offensive guy This is all about the quarterback. I feel confident with Caleb Williams going forward. He has a lot of great things, but I think once he gets the right coaching, he's going to be a superstar in this league.
Yeah. I think their defensive coordinator is already settled. I think they already know who it's going to be. And I think it's going to be Lou Anarumo. I think there's a connection there somehow that I got to go back and look. But I think Lou Anarumo, for whatever reason, during the year, I was hearing that, like, if something ever happened with him in Cincinnati, that he would probably end up in Chicago. And I'm like, really? I'm like, all right, I'll take it. I think Lou Anarumo, despite what happened this year with Cincinnati, and if you think that any of that was on the defensive coordinator, like that, Cincinnati let personnel go for years in the secondary. And then they also, got a lot of injuries this year. And if you looked at them, the Bengals in the playoffs, their defense always played really well. Always found a way to shut down Kansas City, or at least slow down Kansas City enough. Big reason why they went to the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. So look at Lou Anarumo as a possible defensive coordinator, as long as we hire a offensive-minded head coach.
You think they could bring Trey Hendrickson too? I would love to have him.
Isn't he a free agent? Like, I think he's a free agent too. I'm trying to remember what the situation is with him, but yeah, Cincinnati, it depends on how much money Cincinnati's going to be throwing around if they want to keep T. Higgins along with Jamar Chase. And Joe Burrow at some point is going to have to start giving money back like he's Tom Brady. Yeah, you wonder if they can also afford Trey Hendrickson, because that is a player he is so good. Although I don't like that he doesn't wear gloves. It throws me off. Like,
that's perfect, right? In Chicago with the cold weather.
It'd be wild. Oh, it'd be so wild.
Honestly, I feel like he doesn't get enough respect in this league when they
100%.
Watching his hands and how well he dips and bends, unbelievable. 17 and a half sacks, led the league this year, consistently 13, 14, 15 sacks a year. A technician, plays the run well. Imagine him opposite Sweat. I think that's what really would elevate things, because Sweat's more of a left end. In my opinion, a guy that plays the run really well. We'll give you those 7 to 9. And who knows, if a guy like Hendrickson or a great pass rusher opposite him, he'd be double digits.
Yeah, Joey just jumped into the chat to let us know that Anarumo, 2015 Dolphins, Ben Johnson and Dan Campbell were part. I knew there was some connection. Thank you, Joey. I had forgotten it. Somebody had told me and then I forgot, but I knew Lou Anarumo. When I heard he got released by the Bengals today, of all things, like the Trent Baalke thing gave me a lot of positivity. And then like Lou Anarumo got fired. I'm like, oh my God, are the stars really aligning for the Bears right now? This could be incredible.
Right. Well, and you're hearing Jeff King, right? The head of scouting, director of scouting for the Bears, has some ties to Ben Johnson. So maybe that's the guy that's gonna, entice Ben Johnson to get here and build this staff like we're all hoping. And then so you're talking about defensive coordinators, and obviously a name that's getting brought up is Aaron Glenn with Detroit. And if you watch last night's game with Minnesota, I mean, he really did a great job. I mean, they've had some games, because Detroit's sustained a lot of injuries. So there's been some games where Detroit gives up like 30 points and people are still saying, no, this guy is great. Look at what he's working with. And then last night on the national stage for the right to have the number 1 seed in the NFC, Aaron Glenn really put on a show. But I see Matt Nagy here in the chat saying Aaron Glenn, gross, because he's he's an offensive guy, so you have to understand. But that's the question I want to ask you, Adam, is when you look at this list of names, and I'll go through it again, I want to know which one triggers you the most. I know
Mike McCarthy.
I don't even have to name the 13 people. You immediately go.
Our guy, I know, and our guy, the barstool guy, Big Cat, was like, I'm starting. He's not my first, 4th, 5th, whatever. I'm like, oh, Mike McCarthy. Like, it would be John Fox all over again. Like, what are we doing? Like that one would be inexplicable. Anthony Weaver, like any of these guys, I would rather take a chance with Anthony Weaver, with Aaron Glenn, hoping to capture lightning in a bottle, as opposed to going with Mike McCarthy. Like that would absolutely be a deal breaker for me.
Well, I heard Danny Parkins, he's gone national. He works out in New York. He called into 670 today as like a random caller to complain about the idea of Mike McCarthy. And he said there's never been a coach to be born on third base and think he hit a triple more than Mike McCarthy, and then cited, like some of the stats and failures that they've gone through. And he said, that his record in the playoffs is 7-5. As the favorite. And he's like, yeah, okay, that's a lot of times being the favorite, but you had Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback for all of that. So, he's benefited off of some really great players around him, but ultimately the majority of his teams, as talented as they are, continually underachieve.
Yes. That was a hallmark of him, although maybe Aaron Rodgers isn't as good as everybody thought he was. Because I don't know if you watch some football this year.
40, man.
Whatever. Like Tom Brady was good when he was 40. Tom Brady won a Super Bowl when he was 40. Yeah. But whatever. Yeah, I do like the Mike McCarthy thing. Like I always felt very confident going into like the playoffs that the Packers were going to lose. Now this is even after they won a Super Bowl. And the only reason they got into the playoffs is because the Bears idiotically just decided not to. Oh, gosh. Why? Why are you letting them in the – see, this is the thing. This is the thing. Watching football over the weekend is thankfully the Chiefs smartly were like, oh, we don't want to see the Bengals in the playoffs. Let's roll out the red carpet for Bo. Do whatever you want, Bo Nix. We just don't want to see the Bengals.
Have a day, Bo. I mean, that honestly was hilarious. When you go back to the rivalry that the Bengals and Chiefs have had over the last 4 or 5 years, and I know how mouthy the players have been towards each other and the fan bases because they've matched up in some pretty big games, including an AFC championship. And then for it to come down to where you need the Chiefs to win to get you in. For Bengals fans, it had to be the most brutal week leading up to that game, and then letting the Broncos win 38-0. Like yeah. I can remember. I'm sure you guys do, and Corey, I can't remember if you were on this team or not when the Bears won their final week of the season, and we needed Green Bay to beat Detroit to get into the playoffs.
Oh yeah, that was the year Levy got fired.
Yes, yeah. You were on that team.
Mm-hmm. I thought you were being glib.
I
thought you were having a go. I'm like, of course he was on that team.
Well, yeah, I get my ears confused at this point. I just want to be sure because we were at our old townhome and I was in my living room and I had my friend Kevin Devine over and I said, Kevin, we're rooting for the Packers tonight. We need the Packers to win, because then the Bears will get in the playoffs. And he goes, well, he's so confused by this. Like, he's not as dialed in as we are about it. He's like, I'll never root for the Packers. I go, Kevin, I understand what you're saying. We're rooting for the Packers. And throughout the game, he refused. And like, it was one of the craziest games ever. The Lions had no business winning it from a talent standpoint, and all this crazy stuff came, and it was so demoralizing. The one time we needed them to win, they lose, and it was such a smack in the face. And my friend Kevin could not understand why it was upsetting me so much, to the point that I threw him out of my house to end the game. That's how it ended. I threw him out of my house. You still talk to
this person?
I will not watch Bears games with him after that. I will not, because he pissed me off so much that night. And when we see each other, I still to this day bring up that moment.
That was a tough game because we played Detroit that day. We handled business, and we're on the bus on the way back from the plane, and we were watching the last little bit of, and that's the year that Adrian Peterson almost broke Eric Dickerson's record, came back from the ACL, and he just put the team on his back in that game. And unfortunately, like, we knew we were going home. We didn't think Lovey was going to get fired after not making the playoffs. We're like, oh, we got another year with him. We went 10-6. We had top 5 defense. He's going to be back. Then he ended up getting fired, and everybody in the locker room was upset about it. So, and that started the demise of this coaching situation with the Bears. I really do think they missed the mark on Lovey. Obviously, we can't go back in time, but I don't think they should have fired him in that situation.
Well, they've been chasing a good coach ever since, firing a coach on a 10-win season, and they've continually got it wrong, and now they look to try to find a culture guy, but somebody that's going to get the most out of Caleb Williams as well. Let me ask you this, Adam and Corey. Both of you guys can jump in here on this one, but I was talking with some friends about this. I was actually on a podcast the other day, Bears Over Beers on Windy City Gridiron. Actually, there were some good guys, and as we started to get into the conversation of the idea of the Lions potentially getting to the Super Bowl, and I've been saying it for a while, and it's not that shocking of a prediction, but I do think the Lions are going to the Super Bowl this year. They have that look. But the question is, do you want them to go to the Super Bowl? Because I think the instinctual reaction is most Bears fans want them to lose as fast as possible so the Bears can hire Ben Johnson as fast as possible. But then as we were thinking about it and we started to talk about it, what about the idea of Ben Johnson getting to a Super Bowl and calling plays in it? And that's your future head coach getting that kind of experience that you would never get otherwise right before you potentially take a job with the Chicago Bears. Is that, even though we'd have to wait longer, would you rather that be the path? If you were guaranteed Ben Johnson was going to be your head coach,
Right.
Would you rather have him in 2 weeks or would you rather have him coach in the Super Bowl?
I would say Super Bowl. I would say, like, if it's one of those things like Jacksonville's hired Mike McCarthy or whatever it is, and you're like, okay, like there's nobody in the mix for Ben Johnson. New England's hired Mike Vrabel, whatever's happened. And it's like us. And I think at that point it'd be like, well, we're either getting Ben Johnson or Terry Glenn or something like that. Even at that point, I would be like, okay, like we're getting a guy with Super Bowl experience, because I don't think that this is something that needs to be rushed. I don't think that this is something that needs to be decided on January 7th or 8th or anything like that. And if we hire him in middle February, it's not going to matter 10 years down the road. Like, oh, remember when we only hired him in February? Like, it won't even matter. And so for me, I would rather have him get that experience and get another run to the playoffs. Now, he's already been to the NFC Championship game, experienced losing that, had a road game. Now this is going to be a different instance where the Lions are the home team throughout. How do you handle this? How do you handle your business during this type of situation? And if they get to the Super Bowl, that's a whole new thing as well. So for me, I would rather have him. I'd want to see him get as much experience as possible. Have him not win the Super Bowl, but have him get as much experience as possible.
No, I agree with Adam. I think that would be great to have that experience there. And I think, honestly, they're probably going to lose both of their coordinators, Detroit. Like, there's a high chance that Aaron Glenn gets a job somewhere out there as well. I mean, he's been requested for interviews and all that kind of in the mix. So I think Detroit's window is now. Like, this is their year, honestly, to win it all. I think they have a great chance to. As much as it pains me to see Detroit potentially win a Super Bowl, I think, there would be nothing about him running it back with Detroit. He's out either way. But I think if he had a great game in the Super Bowl, called a great game, Jared Goff, the offense is high-powered, flying around, I think that would be a great thing. And this could be something, that the Bears fans remember. If he, went to a Super Bowl, called a great game. We had to wait a little bit, but sometimes it's worth the wait. A guy like Ben Johnson.
Well, Bears fans will rip each other apart while we wait for that.
Oh, yeah.
That would be interesting to see the patience of the Bears fans, as some people in the chat are pointing out. The Bears fans are not known for patience, so I don't know how well that
But you
go.
would know, like, if we're not hiring a coach as the Lions keep winning, like, it would be pretty evident that we're probably in on him.
Because I can obviously remember the story of Buddy Ryan, like, telling his team before the Super Bowl that he was going to the Eagles, and I think it was Dan Hampton, like, broke the chalkboard before they went out on the field. Like, is there a scenario where they get to the Super Bowl and it's announced, whether it's through, like, your guys
Somebody would
at
find
NFL
out.
Network that
Somebody would
he's
find out.
going to be the head coach? Like, that would be a really interesting scenario, because then let's say in that scenario, the media week leading up to the Super Bowl, that it's announced through sources that Ben Johnson's going to take the job with the Bears. Then
it would be like noted bleephead who found out about Devin Hester, who's just
right.
like, yep, like, hey, like, it would be like that, where everybody knew by Tuesday.
Okay,
during
so
Super Bowl week.
All right, so then to take it a step further, of would you want him coaching in the Super Bowl? If it was announced that Ben Johnson was going to be the head coach when the Super Bowl was over and the Lions were in it, are you rooting for Ben Johnson and the Lions to win the Super Bowl, knowing that's your future head coach?
I would look at it as a glass half full either way, because either our coordinator just won a Super Bowl and has a more recent Super Bowl win than Green Bay, or he lost and the Lions still suck. Like either way, it's a win for me, so I'm good with it. Either way it goes.
Okay. It's going to be interesting. Caleb Williams spoke to the media at Hallis Hall today as Thomas Brown and the Bears are doing some of their exit interviews as we've reached the end of this miserable 2024 season. And Caleb Williams said about Ben Johnson that he was fascinated to watch him, and he's obviously done really well. Would be cool to see all that go down. And then, he just emphasized how cool it's been to watch Ben Johnson go to work. I think it's gotten to the point, especially now that New England has opened their, head coaching vacancy, and so many of us are assuming that means they're going to hire Mike Vrabel. It only makes sense, but they did also put in a request to interview Ben Johnson as well. So I think there's still a lot of things to be played out, and there's a lot of assumptions being made at this point, and we're not quite there yet as much as we all want the answers right now. So it'll be interesting to see how this goes down. Corey, when you look at this, and then we've talked so much, through some of the obvious options. We talked a lot about Mike Vrabel. We've talked about the need for the culture in this locker room to change the players today. It was pretty damning when you heard the amount of players from Andrew Billings, who's a pretty soft-spoken leader or veteran on this team, even coming out and saying, like, hey, we can't have this crap happening here anymore. DeMarcus Walker advocating for a guy like Mike Vrabel and saying, that shit would stop day one. It's an indictment on this locker room. So when you're looking around at some of these names, is there anybody that's kind of, off the beaten path here that you're looking at? Like this Anthony Weaver from, Miami. I think most Bears fans aren't going to know very much about him, but as his name came up, I did a little bit of research into him, and he certainly has the presence, right? And you played for a guy like Lovie Smith, and his presence was very strong, and he obviously a defensive coordinator. When you look at it, at somebody like that, does that intrigue you at all? I know how much we all want Caleb Williams to have the right guy to develop properly.
Yeah, I mean, I thought about that, but honestly, like for me, it's Ben Johnson, it's Mike Vrabel. Somebody I think it hasn't been getting enough talk about is Liam Cohen. I think he's done a great job with Tampa Bay and Baker Mayfield and the injuries that they've had. I mean, Baker Mayfield, I believe, has 4,500 yards passing this year. When Mike Evans has been hurt most of the year. The other receiver was injured as well that they lost for the year. So what he's been able to do with him has been unbelievable. So I think he should get some consideration when it comes to the Bears head coaching job, just for what he's done with the quarterback position, what they're trying to do with Caleb. The thing is, right, for me, I'm all about a guy like Vrabel, what they say, a leader of men. I know people, get controversial about that, but I think he is good for culture, and I think he would nip a lot of those stuff in the butt when it comes to, the locker room issues, guys, dilly-dallying, the attention to detail things, not following through, the effort, things like that. But if they're going to have an offensive head coach, you have to get the right coordinators and the right people to check people if that's not your mantra. So that's got to be the thing going into this offseason, having a plan for exactly what you're going to do with the right head coaches, the staff, how they're going to pick them and decide it. And especially if you have a head coach that doesn't have experience, having that head coach consultant to really talk them through those situations and help mold them as a head coach.
Corey Wootton and Adam Rank from NFL Network joining us here on CHGO Bears After Dark as we start to round third and head home here on this program. But I was curious, Adam, I mean, I know you're reveling in Victory Monday glory. How does that feel? It's been 85 days since we've seen a Victory Monday. And when Cairo Santos lined up, I didn't feel great about it. The kick goes through. The team had their moment as they try to Lambeau leap into the stands, and the Packer fans are shoving them out of the stands? How much are you reveling in the glory of this victory Monday over the Packers, and who have you reminded today of this victory that we get to have for the rest of the offseason?
It's so rude of those Packer fans of like, I thought you guys were supposed to be these genteel Wisconsin who are so like, oh, these great fans and whatever, being so rude. The Bears just wanted to celebrate, and you guys are pushing them back so rudely. But again, like, I'm happy for Caleb Williams and Cairo, of course, for both of them to get a little bit of redemption about what happened in Green Bay last time. Again, never having to hear that Caleb Williams has never beaten the Packers. I think that's a big thing to get over, just to get over with. I was apprehensive about him even playing in this week because I'm like, what are we doing? Like, it's the Packers. And I know Charles Martin was a long time ago, but it's like, I don't want to put him out there in a situation where like things could happen or things could go poorly. Like with the Packers, again, I don't understand what they were doing. Why was Jordan Love even on the field? Why was Christian Watson out there? Again, any other franchise would be questioned for those decisions, but nobody really asked the Packers those kind of things. But I thought it was, I think it's great to not have to worry about that ever again, and never to be like, and the streak is now over. And when you look at the all-time record, it had gotten, went from the Bears' favor to now it's obviously decidedly in the Packers' favor. We just knocked one of those wins back. We just got a win back from them so that when we start our great ascension, it's a little bit easier. So I don't think it's something to be taken lightly. I don't think that it's like it means the world by any stretch of the imagination, but it's still significant enough. And I know a lot of people are out there like, oh, Bears fans celebrating their Super Bowl. You're like, absolutely. Why wouldn't I? There are 13 teams in the playoffs right now who are going to be so disappointed when their season ends, except for the Packers, because they're kind of expecting it. And hey, we have the youngest team in the league. Like, okay, great. But I think for a lot of people, they end their season with disappointment. We knocked off our rivals in Lambeau Field. I think back to the summer when Caleb was, amongst the fans chanting Green Bay sucks and stuff like that. Now it's not as ridiculous because there's nothing to come back. We beat you, like we won, like, and you're not winning the Super Bowl either.
Adam, I don't know if you've heard the news, but I've banned that chant.
I know you did. I know. I saw it.
I've banned it. So
don't do it at Wrigley Field.
Your thoughts on my banning of the chant?
It's back, baby. What are you talking about? We're back.
No.
By the way, the Friday.
I should be getting thanked for banning the chant because then they win. I think the football gods look kindly on that banning, but now we got to stick to it. That means you got to stick with me here and keep the ban in place.
Do you think too? I got to be honest, because I'm conflicted now because when I come out for the draft, I'm going to the Cubs play that Friday of the draft,
right?
So I'm going to go to the Cubs game. I'm going to get nice seats from one of the local networks. Although I kind of want to sit in the bleachers.
You're going to sit in the bleachers with us. We do a Friday 120 club for every day game on Fridays at Wrigley.
All right. I'll tell my friend. I'm going
to be there. I'm going to be in town for it. So I'll be there.
So I'll be there. I'm going to go to that. I'm going to that game for sure.
If you big time us and sit down in them exec seats.
Am I going to be allowed? I don't think I would. They're not going to take kindly to me because I'm not necessarily a Cubs fan.
The Green Bay Sox has been banned, but if you sit in the exec seats while we're out in the bleachers, you'll be hearing Adam Rank Sox chants from the left.
I almost want to do that now. I want to hear that. I want to hear that erupt in Wrigley. I don't want that to happen in Wrigley because I would expect that in Comiskey. But no, I don't know. I stopped rooting for the Cubs in 2016.
Okay.
Because I can't claim them when they're winners. You know what I'm saying? Well, I didn't go through all the hard times like you guys did. Like I watched them from afar, so it wasn't like I was going to the stadium. Like it's always a weird thing to me when people live out here, wherever you are, and you don't root for the local baseball team, because baseball is such a local. I don't care where you grew up, but it's like you should root for the team that's in your hometown because you probably end up going to like 20 games. I think I go to at least like 40 Angel games a year.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine if I moved back to Chicago, I would still pull for the Angels. I would still want them to win, but I would consider myself a Cubs fan because that's where my kids would be going. We would be walking. My friend who just took over at one of the networks there, he's moving into Roscoe Village, and I'm like so envious. I'm like, because my kids love baseball so much. I'm like, I can't even imagine what it would be like to live in a neighborhood where the stadium is. My kids would love that. So my daughter today was asking me, like, when does spring training start? She's like, I can't wait. She's like, I want to go to spring training this year. I'm like, we go to 40 Angels. Like, we don't not go to games. It's not like she's like, oh, but I really want to go to spring training. I'm like, all right, we're going to go. And obviously the Cubs are out there too. So we can meet up, but like, it would be so fun. But I have to go to the bleachers. There's no way I can't be in the bleachers. I'll let it be known that I have to. Don't give me the seats from the corporate executives who run everything, or maybe I'll stick around for Saturday and go to the night game.
We'll set it up. Yeah. And then if you get corporate seats for the Saturday game, then I'll go with you.
Different story. Okay. Yeah. Then we'll bring it along.
Maybe you have to bring out the clubs. Maybe we'll get a round in or something.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Duh. That's happening.
Yeah.
Wait, are you guys can you golf in April? Like, geez Louise, do you guys?
Of course.
Yeah,
I can't
It'll be more of a question if you can golf with us in April.
Oh, you were saying
we're built for this.
Hold on. No. Listen, when I get up in the morning, usually after this week, when I'm dialed in a little bit, I'll get up in the morning. It was 8 degrees when I got up this morning.
Mm-hmm.
8 degrees.
That's pretty cold.
Yeah.
Although, wait, it's I think that's 46 to you Americans. It's still pretty cold. I keep forgetting you Americans love Fahrenheit.
Americans. Okay. Appreciate everybody tuning in here. What do you guys think?
Kyle Hendricks is our connector. Kyle Hendricks is from here. So yeah,
that's
from
right.
Southern California.
Oh yeah, Braggs. Real quick, I was gonna say about the whole Green Bay game. So when I look at Green Bay, obviously yesterday I was kind of like, the season has been so much of a disappointment. So I was kind of like, about the game. But when you think about it, right, breaking that losing streak, and then I look at Green Bay in general, I just don't feel like they're that great of a team, to be honest with you. So I don't feel like they're a team that scares me, right? When I look at the Lions, I'm like, man, they can really do some things. Minnesota, especially when they're playing at home, that place is rocking. I look at Green Bay and they're just to me. Like offensively, Jordan Love, I know he was injured this year dealing with some stuff, but I don't look at any part of their roster and I'm like, yep, they got that team right there. So I feel like very confident in the Bears to potentially overtake them next year and some of the other teams potentially in the NFC.
Here's the blueprint. Should have beat Green Bay twice. We all know this. Lions are going to lose both their coordinators. Dan Campbell's just the guy, the rah-rah guy. He's not doing anything. He's not doing anything.
Hey, don't get to that.
I'm just saying. And now they're going to lose both their coordinators. I'm showing you the blueprint. I'm not saying that this is the blueprint of where it needs to go next year. And so now the Lions lose both their coordinators. Good luck to them. And then Minnesota, they're going to lose Brian Flores. And then, we've all Sam Darnold, the clock struck midnight on Cinderella.
Oh, stop.
And Sam Darnold turned it. I know you're a Sam Darnold guy, so you're not going to get.
It doesn't matter because they're going to go to J.J. McCarthy anyways. They're going to go to an inexperienced quarterback regardless.
You know what? I'm trying to set up a blueprint of how we're going to win the division.
No,
you fight me on all of it.
I'm not fighting you. No, because this is something I heard on the radio today. It was on Sirius XM. And it was these guys, and one of them is Pat Kerwin, who's a great football mind. I don't know who the other guy was. And this was the guy who kept saying is like, why would Ben Johnson want to be in that tough division? I'm like, it's tough right now. Like, you should know how quickly things change in the NFL. Like, it's like, these divisions that are, it's a brutal division becomes like the AFC South pretty quickly. And the AFC South could end up being a prominent division in the next couple of years. Like, you don't know. And for all these reasons that you're laying out, like, the astute football observer would note these things, and that perhaps the path to winning the NFC North is not as daunting in 2025 as it was this season.
Okay. All right. I like it.
I'm with you. I'm backing you. I just don't like that you're bashing Sam Darnold to do it.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's the only thing.
I'm sorry for that.
I would pay Sam Darnold. I would. I think what he's
Me
done
too.
has been unbelievable. It's not like you got to worry about the offensive coordinator going to be a head coach somewhere. Kevin O'Connell is there to stay. He is one of the bright minds in football. This NFC North, there's a lot of great coaches. Can the Bears get their head coach? I think that's the common denominator between these good teams that make pushes every year. The Andy Reids, Kevin O'Connell's. Obviously, he's a young coach. Dan Campbell. They're building a reputation for themselves, and they're building dynasties for their franchises. The Bears fans, we're looking for, hey, who's going to be that head coach to really build that franchise and get the mold going? Because there is enough talent. You got to build the trenches. So hopefully this offseason they will do that. And Braggs, if they do a receiver and you're like, no, the trenches, okay? Build in the trenches this offseason.
Oh, yeah. I thought you were going to catch it last night where I was like, Ashton Genty,
I heard you say that. I just ignored
Chicago
you.
Bears. Yeah.
Did you wait till you see him play against Penn State. You might change your mind.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of that, Penn State plays my Notre Dame Fighting Irish.
Is that tonight?
Nope, that's Thursday night. It's going to be a big game. Adam, how have you been enjoying the college football playoff? I know you were a huge critic of it. Have you found a way in your cold little heart to enjoy this beautiful tournament that Notre Dame is thriving in?
It's still lame. It's still ridiculous. Just unnecessary.
All right, Corey, who do you think is going to win, Notre Dame or Penn State? I don't want to spy. I know you got to do your show. I don't want to spoil the show, but I need to know what you think because you've been, doing the All Big Ten podcast here with our guy Joey, who's been behind the scenes here working hard. And so I'm curious what you guys think. I need to know from the Big Ten experts.
Joey, go first. You lead the stage.
Okay, you want me to go first? So I was quite aghast to see in one of the mock drafts that are rolling around, Drew Aller possibly going top 12 in next year's draft. That's the face, Corey. That's the face I was looking for. Anyways, moving on. So I think the biggest question in this one is I think Notre Dame's defense is the best defense going right now in college football, and I'm actually going to give them the slight edge over Ohio State. Ohio State's defense is more talented. I think Notre Dame's defense is playing the best right now. So when you match that up against Penn State, who's going to get that Andy Colton, Nicky Gadget style? Let's see if he can pull some tricks out of his bag. I am curious. I think it's going to be a really low-scoring game. I don't like where Notre Dame's offense is necessarily, so I do like Penn State, but in a very, very low-scoring game. I'm talking slobber knocker, 14-13, something along those lines.
And Jeremiah Love, hopefully he's healthy because he's a dynamic running back who got banged up in that game, so we'll have to wait and see. But Penn State also has injuries of their own. We'll have to see if Abdul Carter is going to play because I know Franklin, Coach Franklin was kind of being a little like trying to keep that under the vest. Cagey. So what do you think, Corey?
I'm going to have to go with Notre Dame, Joey.
Let's go.
Tell
me. I think the way they're playing defensively, they're playing on a different level. I think this is going to be a smash mouth football type of game where they're going to run the football. But I think Notre Dame has a superior defensive line. Abdul Carter is an absolute monster, great pass rusher. The run game, he's decent, but I think Notre Dame they're superior up front, and I think that's going to be the difference. Both quarterbacks, pedestrian numbers at times, smash mouth football. NotreAme. The only time I'm going to side with Braggs, he's over there like Rudy, and I'm
like
all button like this.
Slow capping.
Yeah, I'm excited. I saw somebody say that I'm a bandwagon Notre Dame fan. That's not true at all.
Come on now.
I'm very quiet about my Notre Dame allegiances because they've broken me over my 39 years in my life. And I told Cole Kmet this, at the start of the year when right before they lost to Northern Illinois, they had just had a huge win against Texas A&M. And he's like, great win. I was like, yeah, it's a great win. And I'm sure they're going to blow it to somebody on this schedule that they shouldn't lose to. And sure as shit, they lose to Northern Illinois like a week later. And I came in the next week, and I said, I told you, Cole, you guys do this every year to me. And this is why I don't let you break my heart anymore. And then the funny thing is like, I watch every week, but I watch in this weird way where I'm just like, I don't believe in you. I don't like you, but I'm going to watch you because I love you. And they've slowly just are winning. They're going to do it to me again now because I have all my friends coming over on Thursday getting pizzas from Chicago. I'm going to bring home from the right near our studio. There's this pizza spot. I'm excited. This is like the first time in years that I'm actually going to like push my emotional chips in, and I know what's going to happen. I'm already bracing for it. But you know what? After everything the Bears have put me through, I might as well just try to love one more time, and it's better to have loved and lost than to never loved at all.
Just like Purdue last year.
Who did Notre Dame beat? Did they beat Georgia?
That's right. They beat Georgia.
Who did they beat? Did they beat a team before that too?
IU, Indiana.
IU, that's what it was. Okay. Because Manti Te'o was in our studio. We were doing GMFB, and he was wearing his jersey. And I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, big game today, Notre Dame and Indiana. And I'm like, you guys, I thought you're not even in the playoff. They're like, no, this is the playoff. I'm like, why is Indiana? This is why college football playoffs are stupid. Indiana was in the playoffs. This is why it's lame. You don't need this many teams. And now they're going to make it worse. And they're going to add 30 more teams. You don't need it. You could have gotten to this point weeks ago.
So, and we, everybody doesn't need to know my life story, but they say, how can I be a Notre Dame football fan, but also a Purdue basketball fan? Pick a school. No, I won't pick a school because you know why, Rob? I didn't go to school. When I got out of high school, I was a bricklayer. That's right. And so I'll pick whatever damn school I want. I've rooted for Notre Dame my entire life when I was a little kid. That's how kids in this area are brought up. There's plenty of IU basketball fans that are.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Fans.
Exactly. I was going to say there are so many people out there that I know who are Notre Dame football fans and IU basketball fans, or DePaul basketball fans back if you're old enough to remember that far back.
Yeah, it's a trope for exactly. Purdue fans love to give IU basketball fans crap for this because they're all Notre Dame football fans. But then when Purdue fans find out that I'm a Notre Dame football fan, I've kind of plagued their fan base for this. So, hey, you know what?
I think you're flip-flopping, man, because I first met you. He had a Purdue Letterman jacket.
Nova Davis in the chat says, I didn't go to school. That's pretty obvious, Greg. Thank you. Yeah, well, guess what? You're watching me now, huh, Nova?
Oh, yeah.
How you like that?
How you like them apples? Oh, boy.
Your school got you at the service counter at Enterprise. Look at you.
Yeah.
I'm just joking. I'm joking, sir. Please don't turn off the channel. They chase somebody away.
Oh, man. So
no disrespect to the guys that work at Enterprise.
Yeah, well, for sure. I was going at a guy on Twitter today, and he was like, oh, CHGO never let you make any decisions. And I told this guy, one day I'd say one day I'd be your boss, but I'll never work at the local McDonald's in your area.
Oh, dang, Braggs. Come on, man.
That's right. That's right. If you're going to dish it, you better be able to take it. That's how I roll here. Nova Davis. And here we go. This is it. He says, we love you, buddy. I'm a corporate attorney. He's doing
well,
hey, I'm corporate now, so maybe one day I'll have to hire you.
No disrespect to our corporate attorneys.
The velvet rope.
Hey, I'll tell you what, Adam. I've known Braggs for a couple of years now, and I'm telling you, now that he's full-time media, that head is getting bigger and bigger. I'm like, dang, what do you want, HGH? The way that head is growing?
Right? Yeah.
I was a legend in my own mind as a bricklayer as well, and my bricklaying bosses loved that.
We call you Megamind now. You remember that kid?
Oh yeah.
You know what? Steven's probably watching right now, and he's probably already making the Megamind Photoshop of me because that's probably an apt comparison because I do have an inflated ego. There's no question about it, and Jenny's the only one that can truly humble me, and that's why we love her. Chubbs also tries to humble me, but he's failed at that many a times, but he's got some super chats in here that I want to throw in before we wrap this show up. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. If you haven't already, show some support to everyone here that's working hard here on the end of Black Monday here on CHGO Bears, second show of the day. Chubbs, $5 super chat. I'm conflicted on whether or not that I should be allowed to celebrate or that you should be allowed to celebrate, Greg, but because I'm so happy, I will allow it. Also, interview John Gruden. He adds in a $5 super chat. You know who we can interview in person? John Gruden. Washington, LA, and Denver all hired experienced head coaches and are winning, and we should too. Corey, he's been texting me. He's been DMing me. Why aren't we talking about John Gruden? Nobody's talking about John Gruden. John Gruden's working at Barstool in Chicago, so he's local right now. But nobody seems to be bringing his name up in head coaching interviews. Is there any shot that he makes it back to the NFL? Is he somebody that you'd want coaching the Chicago Bears and developing Caleb Williams?
So no, I don't think he'll have a shot in the NFL just because of everything that happened. I think, especially with the Bears, the way the McCaskies operate, there's no shot they would let him be the head coach.
But would you want him, even knowing what he's done? Like, and is it because of the emails, or is it because of what you look at him?
Unless Tony Dungy set up the team for him, I'm not interested.
Correct. That's how I look at John Gruden. He basically had Tony Dungy's team, won that Super Bowl, and wrote off.
Won that Super Bowl because he played his old team that didn't change any of the calls.
Correct. So I don't know. I mean, I think John Gruden loves football. I think that's obvious. He seems like a great guy to potentially hang out with. They're doing great stuff at Barstool, but wouldn't want him as the head coach of the Bears.
Yeah, that's fair. So Chubbs quit asking me now. Jesus.
Yeah, there it is.
Alex Ammerling, $2 super chat. Glad to see Caleb got a game-winning drive. Absolutely. That was
100%.
Great finish for him to the season and the team to have one bright spot, and Thomas Brown to get one win as an interim head coach, as he tries to move on to see what opportunities he can get in the future. But yes, definitely something that Caleb Williams can carry over into the offseason. That toe drag swag from Caleb Williams to Roma Dunze. We need that connection to really come together in their second year. And, if they get the right coach in here, and even regardless of the fact he had 2 head coaches and 3 offensive coordinators, we keep talking about whether or not he gets the right coach. How can he do? Well, guess what? This is what he did this year with 2 head coaches.
The wrong coaches.
He had the most total yards of a quarterback in Chicago Bears franchise history. And we understand it's a low bar here in Chicago, but that's not to say there hasn't been talented quarterbacks to play in this city, whether it's Jim Harbaugh or Eric Kramer for a short period of time, or Jay Cutler. And yours truly, Caleb Williams, had some numbers that we've never seen here in the city. And yes, T3P, we understand that it's more about numbers to be a great quarterback, but it's a great starting block for a rookie in a season of turmoil. And let's hope that this is the floor for Caleb, and let's hope he can improve on all the things that we all see that he certainly needs to try to get better on as his career continues. Bradley Hassey, my guy, finishing the night up. Great job this season. And he's talking to all of us. He said Greg, but that's because he's my good friend. And
Mega mind.
I love Brad. And see, no, I did the humble brags there. I brought you all into this, but Brad's a good friend of mine, and he says, keep up the good work. And we appreciate you, Bradley. And we appreciate all of you here tuned in here late tonight. So appreciate everybody. Hit that like button. Adam, welcome back. The prodigal son returned here to the program. We're into the off season, but we've only just begun with Chicago Bears coverage because it's about to start.
It's our time. This is when we're good.
Yeah, this is where we.
It's fine. And you know what? I've just decided to own it. Fine, we're good. We're good from January to September, and I'll take it. The Packers are good for 1 month. They're good for Toyotathon, and then once that clock hits January, boom, it's over, and then it's done. And then you can go play pumpkin. You can go lose your playoff game and talk about we have the youngest team. We're so good. Yeah, okay. They're also so precious about the fact that they don't have a number 1 wide receiver. They just think that's so great. Amon-Ra St. Brown is what's really holding the Lions back. Thank God you don't have one of those, Green Bay. Who knows? Thank God you don't have Jahmyr Gibbs. That would be awful.
Yeah. Yeah, Chubb's finishing this up with the band chant. I won't say it, so I'll let you say it. I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it. It's banned.
The words are on the screen.
Yeah,
the words are on the screen. We're not chanting
I'm banning it. I don't know, Chubbs. They won.
I broke
the curse.
Yes, do not chant Green Bay sucks, everybody.
Mega Man.
I don't want a lot of super chats saying Green Bay sucks because we're not going to show them.
Mega Mind.
We're not going to show them. If you guys start giving in these $2 Green Bay suck chants, we're not showing them. Telling you right now, not happening.
Drawing the
Stop
line.
the Green Bay suck stuff. Stop it.
Thank you, Corey.
We're not
Thank you,
doing
Joey, as always. And thank you to everyone tuned into the chat. Please hit that like button one more time on your way out. Hey, tough season in 2024, but we started out with a bright spot in 2025 with a win over the Green Bay Packers. Now let's go get a damn head coach. So we'll see you tomorrow. Ryan Poles speaks to the media at 10 a.m. Our guys will be at House Hall covering all that, and then we'll be back in studio to recap everything that we heard from Ryan Poles in that press conference. So until then, make sure you tune in for all that. Donald Gooch.
Hey, Donald, no, we're not saying Green Bay sucks.
Don't
send it in. Don't send those in. We're not saying Green Bay sucks.
Yes.
Do not send those in.
It's not good, Gooch. Dr. Gooch, as we call him on Twitter. He is a real doctor. He's a learned doctor, but he's not very smart. No, I kid. We appreciate it.
I kidding.
All right, that's it. Bears fans, see you tomorrow. And always keep your head up and always bear down.
We all silly like the mayor.